Okay, well, welcome to Wednesday night. Before I start with the Lord's Prayer, I wanted to remind everybody that Dr. Eriko is doing a new series starting this Saturday, part of the School of Light. I had shared just for a few minutes the announcement. You should have gotten that as well in your email. Registration ends on the 8th of March. The session itself is at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the 9th of March. And the topic is Dreams, Visions, and Intuitions, Part 1. So it will be multi-part. I think he's going to do two sessions on that topic. So if you're interested, please contact the foundation or follow the instructions that you got by email. As well, he's still doing the Aramaic class. I just listened to the last few seconds of today's session. So if you're also interested in learning how to do the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, you missed about half of it, but you can probably catch up via the video and videos on YouTube. And you can contact the foundation if you're interested. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and open with the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic tongue, the way Jesus spoke it over 2,000 years ago. So if you take a second, take a deep breath, and center yourself. And if you've learned it, you can try to do it with me in your own voice. Aun dwashmaya nthqaddash shmach تأثي ملكوتاخ نهوي سوينخ إكنا دوشمية أبرعا حولان لحمات سنكانا يومنا واش وقلان حوبين إكنا داب حنان شوق لحيوين لا تعلن لإنسيونا إلا بصا من بيشا مثول دي لاخي ملكوثة حي لو تشبحته العالم عالمين آمين. So the Lord's Prayer is actually a great segue into one of the first things I wanted to cover. Today is going to be a continuation of the message I've been doing the last. I can say last two times I spoke, but it's really even before the holidays I started on Jesus's core teachings, and this has been the center of what I've been doing recently. And to be honest, it's like all there is this stuff. I know the Bible is big and has a whole bunch of things. Today I was bouncing all over the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, and the New Testament. And it's, there is a lot of noise, and Jesus distilled so much of the goodness that's in all of it into his own way of explaining God. And I received a few questions last time. So again, if this intrigues you, I'll try to answer more questions. I think I have about 4 or 5, maybe more, that I want to go over. And I'm going to start with some of them because they are going to lead that discussion. One of the first questions that I mentioned, I think not the last time, the time before, one of the questions that came to us in the Q&A is somebody asked, how do you say in Aramaic, come out of this man, you unclean spirit? So instead of just translating and giving you an Aramaic sentence, what I'd like to do is I'm going to go to the Gospel of Mark, which I've been reading a lot from in the last couple of weeks, and give you a translation of when Jesus used it and the power of the Aramaic, and even with Dr. Lamb's translation, when you dig deeper into it, he tried to bring it to native speakers of English and tried to stay true to some of the translations prior to him. So I'm going to give you a little bit, and I'm going to focus on a few words. So if you want to catch those, you can. But this is, so first let me put it up on the screen so I can point to it as we go. Let me see if I can find it here. I prepared it for you, so it should be quickly. So Mark. Okay, there we go. And okay, this is good. So I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to walk you through it. Okay. So this is the Aramaic verses. This is Mark, the Gospel according to Saint Mark, and this is, if you're learning Aramaic, these are this is the two verses 25 and 26. What's happening here is I'm going to use some of the English so I can get you all on what the story is here. And this is in line of Jesus's freedom teachings, because one of the things that Jesus focused on is freeing us also from disease. Now, healing was definitely a big part of his ministry. Throughout the ministry, he had episodes where people brought people to him or asked him for healing, or asked for healing for somebody they love. So his few years of ministry, where we have a lot of examples. And when he was teaching the young men who were with him, the young men and women who were with him, he definitely emphasized healing as something that should be a part of their ministry. We have that power in us. Our bodies are built to heal. And sometimes the stress and environment and news and so forth, but pile up on our spirit, on our soul, in a way that manifests sometimes physically, sometimes mentally, psychologically, with depression. There are so many of our illnesses are caused by these pressures, plus sometimes the foods we eat, our lifestyle. So we do a lot of things sometimes that kind of get us off balance in many ways. And Jesus was all about getting us into our wholeness, in a way that would give us a good life, good long life. So that's why his healing ministry was a big part of his message. And I often say that he did not want it to be the focal point, because he would have spent all his days like one of your primary care physician offices or specialty offices today. He would have been sitting there, maybe an ER actually, and he would have had people come in from everywhere. And if you read a lot of his travels, as soon as he landed somewhere, often people brought him somebody ill, and that most of his stories begin with that way. They came and did this, or what he was walking and somebody touched his robe because they knew he was a healer and energy left him. And it was a lot of energy healing, on top of advising around fasting and around the different ways of dealing with these illnesses. So in this episode, and it's very early on in the Gospel of Mark, I'm reading in chapter 1, and verse 23 is where the story kind of begins. And there was in their synagogue a man who had in him an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, Jesus of Nazareth, what have we in common? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, Holy One of God. So this is not it's making fun of him. Holy One of God. So this man confronts him in the synagogue. And now I'm going to do the English, and then I'm going to show you the Aramaic. And Jesus rebuked him, saying, be silent and come out of him. So now Jesus, though the man is the one who's attacking him, Jesus says, come out of him. So he's rebuking something else that was going on with this person. And this is Dr. Lamsa's translation, and the unclean spirit threw him down and cried out in a loud voice and left him. And to end the story, and they were all astonished. So everybody in the synagogue was astonished and kept asking one another, saying, what does this mean? And what is this new teaching that with such a power he commands even unclean spirits, and they obey him? And his fame, see, we're still in chapter 1 of Mark, and his fame immediately spread throughout the country of Galilee. So now you see that he walks in, And this is Mark, as I said, what I love about the Gospel of Mark is it doesn't have a lot of the baggage that we get in Matthew and Luke. He goes straight into Jesus's ministry. And here is one big pillar of his ministry is healing. And here is the first story, but then his fame spread. So imagine if you are in a town and you're not feeling well, and you hear this healer is coming in with this new method dealing with these kinds of things. That's why people flock to him. We hear a lot of stories about people like even climbing up to the roof when they couldn't get through the doors and the windows where he was in one of the homes. They climbed up to the roof and they dug through the roof and lowered one of their ill family members for Jesus to heal him. So healing was a big part of his ministry. Now, looking at the Aramaic, and this is what I read is I read from 23, but I'm starting with 25. What Jesus did, back to the question that I received, what Jesus did here is wuka be Yeshua. So now in Aramaic it works the other way. So Jesus rebuked him, Wemmar, and ordered and said, or opened his mouth to say, and he said to him that this is sukut. So what he's here is saying, sukut fumech, shut up. So he did not, what Dr. Lamsa's translation is rebuked him saying, be silent. Okay, what he really said in Aramaic, it's very blunt. He immediately turned to that man and he said, shut up, be quiet. So shut your mouth is really what he's saying here. And then he tells him, and minne, and leave him and get out of him. So this is a rabbi with a whole bunch of people being confronted by a man who's off balance and yelling at him and making fun of him. Oh, you holy one. And he tells him, get out of him. So he knew that he has voices in his head that are not his own, that he had a mental illness. And this is, now we don't have the new psychology language and the new psychology dictionary to explain this. This is 2,000 years ago in Galilee, very basic understanding. Jesus noticed that mental illness and he faced it, head on to heal this man and spoke to. So now this guy who was attacking him backed off. And what we're told after that, that command of leave him, shut your mouth and leave him, that threw the man to the ground. So it was a physical reaction, and he basically fell to the ground and yelled in a very loud voice, screamed. And this is a very important Aramaic word right here, which means it not just it left him, it almost like died and left him. So whatever was bothering him, the psychological issue that he had left him, and it seems like a complete healing, because the verb that's used here has a meaning of to leave or also to die or to expire. So it expired, and the way you say that the verb itself is it's a strange verb. I was talking with Dr. Erica about it. It's the same one that's up here. So this is the word here, this one, and then here it's a different form of it, and it is a wow, a nun, a the, a ko, and a the, and it's nif kath, meaning it expired, it left, it died. Okay, because that's the command that we hear from Jesus up here. with, see the noon sound is not there. Here we have an N, here we don't have an N. We have the wow, which is an and then it's fe, wow, and kop sound, or a Q sound. Okay, so Jesus orders it to leave, to die in him, and the man just goes on the ground and screams, and then gets into a peaceful state because that whatever was bothering him leaves him. And that's why they haven't seen anything like it in Galilee, in where Jesus was speaking at the synagogue. And they were very surprised that you could deal with that kind of mental illness, that kind of situation. This man probably was part of the community for a long time, and they all most likely either cowered away when he came yelling at them, maybe felt sympathy. His family probably, apologized and kept him away, or he might have been even, a lot of people with that kind of mental illness, sometimes they were let out, and the community, they slept in the farms, they slept outdoors, or they slept in the cemeteries. So for him to come into the synagogue and to confront Jesus, it was a very tense situation, but Jesus did not cower away, did not treat him badly. He confronted his illness and he healed him. So that's the essence of it. If the person who asked the question still wants the exact Aramaic, I can go verse by verse. Reach out to the foundation, and I can send you an email with it. So we see this healing session that takes place. Now let me stop sharing my screen. Okay, so that's one of the first questions. The other questions I have, there is another one that comes from, but I'll go in order to be fair to people who submitted the questions in order. Hello, are the teachings of Jesus and the Eastern spirituality the same? I'm assuming Eastern spirituality, the person is referring to like Buddhism, Hinduism, and so forth. That's usually people refer to it that way. Are they the same because they both tell to worship the God in spirit? So at a very basic level, absolutely. It's a spiritual message. And you'll see when I go into the rest of today's talk about that spirituality. Jesus was unique in that he took in the Near East. So yes, Eastern religions focus on spirituality, yet they create a lot of religion around that. So that's part. So you learn one thing, but then to practice it, sometimes you get the other ritualism, which is what happened to Jesus's message. We have a lot of ritualism built on it, and a religion and a belief system. And Jesus was so focused on that aspect of connecting with this thing that we call God. I prefer using Alaha, connecting with Allah, with the spirit of the big spirit, the Ithya Rabba, the spirit that's everywhere, that does not need anything, that exists of itself, of its own energy. So that's why Jesus had did not want to get into the ritualism that we see before him, because by the time he came, the temple was dominant, and the teachings of the temple were very dominant, and there was a very, very strong opposition to the temple throughout the history of the Jewish religion or Judaism. And I did talk early on, so if you haven't been with us, go back a few weeks, and you'll see that the essential or the main teachings of Jesus. I did cover that. So now we're talking about a God that is spirit, that demands of us to function that way, which is really a good way to jump into the next question that I got. You're almost kind of like, because these came kind of in sequence when I spoke a couple of weeks ago, so it feels to me that you all were kind of like thinking around the same space. That's the thoughts that were coming to you were about originating from the same source, which is awesome. So the next question is, please explain what Jesus meant when he said, thou shalt love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. What did these three words mean in Aramaic specifically? So for that, I'm gonna bring up those three words. So I should have closed that, and I'll open this one, and it's going to be hiding. There we go. And I'll share it. Okay. So where I'm going with this is I'm going to the Gospel according to St. Matthew. It's also in Luke, so it's in multiple places. But Matthew 22:36 through 40. So what Jesus is referring here is to Deuteronomy. This almost exact sentence was also mentioned in Deuteronomy in the Hebrew Bible. And this is what we're looking at here. So Yishwa, Den Amar Le, ordered. So again, the scenario here, so we get it in the context of what was happening with Jesus. They're asking him, what is the most important commandment? Now, when you think of commandments, because I know both me and Dr. Eriko have been working with the commandments and the law and Jesus. So here, the scenario that's taking place in chapter 22 towards the end, and one of them who knew the law asked him, testing him. So the intent here was, again, we hear a lot that a lot of the questions that were asked of Jesus were to test him, test his knowledge, test his approach to the Hebrew Bible. And he knew that they were, constantly basically poking at him to also to try to provoke him, say something against that. And ultimately they caught him on one of these sayings, being the son of God, or the firstborn son of God, and that they accused him of blasphemy, and it cost him his life eventually. But that's so he knew where they were going. But from the beginning, what he said to them, Jesus said to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might, and with all your might and mind. So the words in Aramaic, to love Maran Allah, our Lord God, min kille, the first one is libbach, which is your heart, libbach, okay? And the next one, min kille, see how it repeats this one and this one. So this is of, all of your, and then here is Neushach. We hear nefesh, newish, nausha is that's the self. So it's all of yourself, all of your being. And then it repeats again, umen kelle. So all of your, and here I'm just like, because the letters are kind of tricky. Haylach. Remember when I was doing in the Lord's Prayer, Hayla utishbohta at the end, which is power and glory. This is your power. Haylach. Okay? So all of your power. So we got all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your spirit, all of your power, and all of your mind. And this is interesting. See, again, and this is your, or of, or from, your, all of your, and here is ra'i nach. So ra'ya is a shepherd. So the mind shepherds the body. So here, from your mind, which shepherds your physical being. So it's your physical being, your spiritual being, your soul, Basically, Jesus is using this to say when you love God, okay, we hear about like serve God, believe in God, and so forth. When you're incorporating the God principles, the God way in your life, according to the teachings of Jesus, then you become you act like God with all your individual talents. So you bring your talents to the world, and then use them to make the world a better place, like God intended it to be, a great place. From the beginning, they knew that the writers of this what we call the Scripture, the Holy Bible, they knew that our role is to make the world a better place and take good care of it. That starts in Genesis. And Jesus understood that. And of course, what do we do? Kind of like imagine the spiritual message, and then imagine all the religion and political movements and belief systems and ideologies. I'm going to stop the sharing here. So all of this, what we actually do is not what we're supposed to be doing, and taking care of one another and acting like God. And the God of Jesus is a loving God. I'll keep repeating, he's an all-inclusive God. He's and I say you can say it, or Allah is a loving Allah. And Allah is an Allah that gives us sunshine and rain, and on the good and the wicked. So that's what Jesus was. That's the thrust of his gospel. His good news is that this is what the God that we have, and we have to all be like that God. And then we'll all be known as the children of that God, because then we are taking the personality of the Father. That's the relationship of being a child of God, is taking the personality and acting like that God. That's the influence on us, is the adults in our lives. Sometimes it's the parents, sometimes it's people who loved us and raised us and influenced us. Sometimes it's our teachers. They're the ones that give us those things. But then what are we getting today? We're getting outlawed books. We're getting hate based on race. We're getting hate based on gender or nationality. Those are the values that we're, and we call them, a lot of them, we call them Christian values. A lot of the news that we hear today about the things that are taking place are coming from the Christians are doing this and the Christians are doing that. It's like, that's not Jesus. Jesus is about inclusiveness, is about healing, is about love, is about loving your enemy. I mean, he took it to an extreme because he knew in his culture, which is the culture that's dominant today, because whether you look at it as an Eastern culture mentality, or the Western Christianity and the Western philosophy, those are the cultures that we're dealing with for the most part. I know the East has concepts, but a lot of them also have been veering in the same direction, or they veered already in the same direction. So the religion itself, it has become oppressive. I've been to very poor countries in Asia, and I've been in different places in Europe and in the Middle East. I see the same thing. Religions, and not one, all of them have been misguiding or misguided. Okay, that's the other thing, is sometimes I deal with a lot of ministers and people who are in religious leadership positions, and when I speak with them, and when we dig down, they're good people. Their philosophies, and now becomes their paycheck, what they live off, and what they've dedicated their life. See, it's almost a trap. Religion becomes a trap for the religious leadership, because it takes them in, and now they have to obey the system. And if they leave with nothing. They leave, like, imagine if you're an engineer and you spent all your schooling and your degrees, and you have a loan and so forth, and you become a very successful engineer with 20 years of experience, and you're making all this money. Then all of a sudden you stop believing in engineering. And if you walk away, your value in the market, you can't go get a job, right? If you don't want to work in engineering, what value can you bring? So that's what happens to them. Now, the real answer to my rhetorical question is really you can bring your leadership, what you learned about what's bad about religion. You can start fixing that in your community. You can start speaking about the things that the religion is not actually speaking about and made you leave it. So that's the trap. So if you're trapped in your position in life, there is always a door that if you close that door or it closes on you, there is always a way out of that, and leveraging your talents and what you learned about the bad stuff from your previous experience can become actually an asset and help you have a better life moving forward. So don't let the economic formulas dictate your spirituality, and that's one of the traps. So that's why Jesus, so here Jesus is saying basically in Aramaic or in English or in any language you speak, incorporate that, make it a part of you, and then function and behave from that space. Okay, so and if you look at the actual commandments of Moses, this commandment is not there. Moses was very forceful in saying, you have to love God. I am the God. I'm a zealous God. So he was like hammering that you have to love Yahweh or Alaha. Okay, that so he was very adamant about the first commandment being about God being, the center of the religion. And because he also had the only one who could speak with God, because they were afraid to speak with God. So they asked Moses to be the delegate to always speak on our behalf. He built a temple for God. He kept God in a box. He kept God behind a tent. So that served him. So now we're seeing Jesus saying, no, the first commandment is to love God with all, not fear, love God with all of your energy, all of you. So that's the real meaning of that. Of all those words he was picking at, when you think that, because people separate my emotions from my brainy thoughts and what, my intuition from my thoughts, and so he's saying with all of you physically, I have physical needs, I have physical thoughts, I have aches and so forth. That is that God is not. He's kind of like all of you are God, and all of you have to you have to love God, and all of you have to behave and come from that space. So that's a big part of his religion. And he continued here. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like to it, love your neighbor as yourself, which is in Deuteronomy, the same place. I think we're talking about Deuteronomy like chapter 6, verse 18 or something like that. So if you go there, it's almost verbatim. Okay, but love your neighbor like yourself. And now when it was said for Deuteronomy, that's the interesting about Jesus bringing it, forward to his time, and now it applies to our time because of just the changes in history. Deuteronomy was thinking that the tribe, right, the tent next to you. So they were all basically the sons and daughters of the Jacob and Isaac and so forth. So he was, people, when they looked at the tent next to them, it wasn't Samaritan, it wasn't Roman, it wasn't from the mixed breeds of the Galileans, who had a little bit of Assyrians and Arameans and so forth, and them. They were looking at their cousins and their extended cousins and so forth at the time of Deuteronomy. Now Jesus bringing it all the way to his ministry and to our ministry, to our time. When I look next to me, I see people of different color, of different ethnic background, of different nationalities, sometimes different sexual orientation. So for me to love my neighbor as myself is similar to what Jesus was facing at his time. It's part of freeing us from that tribal mindset as well, but he's using their teaching to do it. So it's expanding a teaching that was in these people who were probably very, very, very prejudiced, very exclusive, not inclusive. They kept their religion and their habits, and they wouldn't eat. And they remember I spoke last time about washing your hands, and if you didn't wash your hands, and you're washing the dishes, and the kosher stuff. And so Jesus saw that, the world is changing, and my neighbors are Romans and from different tribes and different ethnic backgrounds. But I'm going to re-emphasize that loving your neighbor as yourself is a very important thing. So he's expanding. This is part of his freedom teachings. I saw a question pop up. Okay, about divorce. Okay, I'll get to that in a sec. Okay, continuing. This is, I probably answered this one. Please share the name of a current day church that most closely follow the Aramaic translations of the Bible, thus reflecting most closely the life's teachings of Christ. So I differentiate, first, let me just be clear. I differentiate between the Christ teachings, because a lot of the Christ teachings came after Jesus died, and Jesus, the man, the prophet from Galilee, who I'm sharing with you quite a bit. So churches, there are a few. I know Dr. Errico speaks at a couple of them. And I don't want to promote them over others, because there are other churches that we speak and affiliate with. But in general, most religions are hard to, I can't go to almost any church, and yet I do go to church and I get fed when I go there. And sometimes I learn what not to do and what not to speak about. But so if you're interested, reach out. And I know Dr. Errico talks about a few churches that also put his teachings online. So I don't know about, like, I honestly, I have a hard time endorsing any specific brand of churches. I became familiar with the Unity churches. They're open-minded. And they bring in a lot of ideas. Sometimes they go very far into Eastern teachings, and they're not very familiar with the Jesus teachings. So if you're asking specifically about Aramaic as a core, I honest to God can't think of any. But then you might get a bit and piece, because they are either familiar with Dr. Lamb's teachings, or they've done their own research, or they have an Eastern mindset that brings in those teachings and they understand it and how to explain it. But as an umbrella, I really have a very hard time endorsing a specific one. And yet, if you're in a community that feels spiritual to you and is feeding you, I'm not condemning any church, because all of them have some good in them, and they bring in some really, really good people into the world. So and that same goes for temples, for synagogues, for mosques, and for any form of people gathering to try to pursue spiritual growth. So find in your community, and if you can't find it, start one. There is nothing wrong with saying, once a month or once a week, I'm gonna, put myself out there and gather 3, 4, 5 people. That's enough for a church. You don't have to have an organized time and place and rent a space. Create your communities if you can't find them somewhere. To me, this is my church. I come here to listen to Dr. Errico when he speaks, and I learn because I open up and I listen, and you teach me by your questions and by your comments. So this is my church, and that's good enough. But if you need a place to go in your community and do more than just one day a week or a couple of days a month, then keep searching and knock on doors, and you might find some really enlightened ministers or synagogues or whatever your background is that speaks to you, and that might be good enough. But from Aramaic, it's tricky. So thanks for asking that question. How are we doing on time? Okay, we're almost to the question part. This is kind of not biblical, it's more of an opinion asked of me. I'm often accused of enabling when I think I am loving others. What is the love that Jesus is teaching? So the difference between loving and enabling is I think you who asked the question, and anybody who's listened to this, when you're helping somebody and giving them energy, that the love that Jesus is talking about is an unconditional love. It's about forgiveness and so forth. Now, giving sometimes, like enabling, is a form of giving, whether you're giving people space or giving them actual money or food or something. And sometimes people can misperceive that as I am, by giving somebody money, I'm keeping them from getting a job. Or if I'm giving somebody food, then I'm keeping them from uh, taking care of themselves and figuring out how to get food on their table themselves. We know the difference. We know when there's somebody who just can't get on their feet, and we're helping them, or helping a community service like a food bank to help them out. And then we know when somebody is just doing the wrong thing constantly, and we're sheltering them. Then those people probably need our love, but they don't need our sheltering or enabling. If they've done something bad, they might have to face up. We can't just protect them from that. And we can still love them, whether they end up, being judged by the law they broke, or the business they offended, or the people they offended. And Jesus he said, God does not judge us. The community and society judges us. And we play a role, and we know when we are actually enabling something that's not right, versus actually from the bottom of our heart helping somebody. So I'll leave it at that. And this question came from YouTube, and I'm going to cover it at a very high level. Can you please go over when Jesus said the only way to get to God is through him, through Jesus? And I think the person is referring to John 14:6. So I'll go ahead and read it. And I probably will offend a lot of people the way I'm going to answer this one, but it's what came to me when I read it, and I thought about it for a while. So in 14:6, Jesus says, it's like you almost have to read all of 14, but specifically in verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No man comes to my Father except by me. So the gospel of according to St. John it's different than what we call the synoptic gospel, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It talks at a different level to people who have already followed Jesus and now are having a hard time that now the man Jesus is dead. So you get a lot of these spiritual teachings at a different, in a different language, different level, not the way Jesus speaks. But specifically on this verse, and I'm gonna kind of just put something out there that came to me, because I think it's actually valid to discuss in regards to this. From an Aramaic perspective, cultural perspective, through me does not mean through me, the man Jesus. It means through my teachings. So that's Jesus. If Jesus came here to die for our sins and wipe our sins clear, then I would have expected a smart man like Jesus, an anointed Christ, Son of God, the way religion teaches. He would have just showed up, maybe got baptized, and then walked right to the temple and told them, hey, I'm here to die and wipe out the sin of the world. So I don't want to walk all over Galilee and heal people and teach them prayer and bless the poor and meek and all that stuff. Why waste time, right? I'm coming here to be an eraser of all sins. Or he came here to erase one sin, by the way. But just why waste time? Why use your voice? If the whole thing is about me dying on the cross to wipe out your sins, I'm just going to go stand there. This is what Christianity doesn't teach. He spent 3 to 5 years in ministry. He spent years before that learning and observing and preparing himself. So So that's why in this verse in John chapter 14, verse 6, when he says you have to you can't get to God except through me, because I'm giving you practical teachings. I'm showing you how to heal, how to love, how to be all-inclusive, how to be non-judgmental, how to forgive so you can be forgiven, so you can release yourself from the things that hold you back. Those are the core teachings of Jesus. If all he wanted to do is come and die, then why read anything else? And I think a lot of Christianity has done that. I think a lot of the churches do exactly that. They take you to he died on the cross, so the story begins with the cross and the blood of Jesus, and forget everything he taught you, the hard stuff that you can live by day to day and make a better world. And this is just maddening to me. And I'm really thankful that the person asked this question online, and it's related to my last talk. So the question came because the person listened to my last talk 2 weeks ago. So through his teachings, we will know God. Okay, and through good teachings, like the previous question about Eastern religions, if you the spiritual side of it and the enlightenment side of it, they teach the same things. That that you have to raise yourself, be a good person, help your community, be good to everybody you interact with, and that's how we get to know God. That's how we get to bring the kingdom of God. If we just believe in a cross, believe in the blood of Jesus, he never preached that. All that came after him. So and that's why I don't spend a lot of my teachings and my time with you on that stuff. Dr. Eriko has a lot of great talks explaining these things. So if you want to know more about it, either go to YouTube and look for things, go to the noohrafoundation.com. There are a whole bunch of videos. You might find some talks there. And if you can't find what you need, go reach out to the foundation, and we have additional older talks and tapes and so forth that not tapes, CDs and DVDs that we can share with you. Okay, so those are the questions that I had on paper, and I'm seeing some that are coming here. So before I start with these questions, because sometimes some of you leave, please do not forget that Dr. Eriko is doing a Nohra School of Light session on the 9th of March, in case you weren't here when I announced it in the beginning. And the 8th of March is the last day to register. Do reach out to the foundation or look at your emails. You should have an announcement there. So the first question from today, what does Jesus believe about divorce? Should people be allowed to get divorced? If they both want a divorce, would Jesus want them to stay together? So the last part, I don't know if Jesus would want them to stay together. Most likely no. But Jesus' position on divorce was the same that was documented in the Hebrew Bible. What Jesus spoke about, he said, if you divorce a woman, because most of the marriages at the time of Jesus, the man controlled the paperwork. Okay, in some cases the women did, but in most cases the most common way was that the men had the power, they inherited the land and so forth, so they had more of the power to give divorce papers and not. And what was happening at the time of Jesus, and remember, at the time of Jesus and long after that, polygamy was a normal practice for men to have multiple wives. So what was happening at the time of Jesus is the men were marrying women and then using them, or if the woman can't give them children or whatever, they get into a fight or family fights. He would throw them out. Then man would throw the woman out without giving her divorce paper. In Jewish society, if the woman has divorce papers, she is wholly restored as a person in society. All her rights are restored. Those rights allow her to marry. They allow her to go to wash in the public wash place, to do the cleansing after if she has her period or after birth and so forth. So she's wholly restored as a full person with all rights. If she's married and thrown out, She has no option. She can't associate with any man. In most cases, people were poor in Galilee, and we're talking about a country under occupation, so there wasn't a lot of wealth. So when these women got thrown out, they couldn't go back to their father's houses or their brother's houses, because they would be just another mouth to feed. So Jesus was very specific, give them the divorce papers. So he was not, but he was anti-divorce for wins. Okay, so and that's what, you're not asking about that. But bottom line, Jesus was okay with divorce as long as it was done according to the rules, and he knew those rules and he dictated those rules. And then if a man and a woman can't get along, they want to move on from each other, and they economically can figure it out. Because sometimes at the time of Jesus, it was very hard for the woman economically. Now we have laws here in most advanced societies that give the woman her rights. Absolutely. And in many cases, the woman now is more equal or in higher power position, economic position. And that basically, whoever is in power, Jesus wants you to do the right thing by the other person. And he prefers not to see it happen, because it was hard, even when you go through the process, especially if there are children and property and other things. But he was not, he did not say you cannot divorce, which I know there are church teachings today that uses the mistranslation of the King James and others. But in the Lamb's Bible, it's very clear that way he translated from Aramaic, and in Aramaic, it's very clear. It's allowed as long as it's done the right way. Enough about divorce, but thanks for the question. Okay, the person is asking me to clarify my example of an engineering degree and the job market. So what I was saying is that if you're stuck in religion or in a job or in any situation in life, so my example was you spent all this time to become an engineer, a successful engineer, and 5 years into it, you have this great experience, you're making great money, but you hate engineering, then figure out a way to step away, use your other talents and the things that you learned during engineering to do something else. I was talking about ministers who are trapped and keep teaching that their church's dogma and rules, and they feel they can't leave, because what would a minister who spent their life building that side of them do if they walk away? And I think there are many places that would take that kind of leadership and love and compassion when they discover that their church is not teaching the true teachings of Jesus, and do something else with that talent. But hopefully that clarifies it. And thank you for your comment about John 14:6. Those are all the questions we have, and we're close to time. We have 5 minutes. This might be concluding my Jesus's freedom teachings. It is core. So, and maybe I'll go a little bit more into the healing ministry, because he really had great different ways as he was teaching that to the apostles, and he demonstrated he wasn't a theoretical teacher. We have a lot of theoretical teachers, people who just get a degree in education and teach a lot, and sometimes they can't do the things they tell us to do. Jesus was very practical, and he showed the love, he showed the compassion, he showed the nonviolence. When they came to arrest him, he refused to let one of his apostles or disciples had a sword with him, and wanted to fight with the arresting soldiers and cut off an ear of one of them. And Jesus said, no, we don't do that. Okay, so he was not. So when we see today's world and the violence and the rationalization, it's okay to kill people because they killed us, or they're hiding behind this or behind that. It's not acceptable. We need to figure out how to stop all of this and get out of this cycle. It does not work. Here we are, 6,000 years or more of civilization, supposedly, and we can't get ourselves out of building weapons and killing one another. Jesus was never for that, and neither were a lot of the spiritual teachers that came before him and after him. We need to get out of it. And Christianity that preaches that and are waiting for Armageddon and armies and all that stuff, that is not Jesus. That's other people who came after Jesus and had to deal with different situations that they were going through, and they're not. That's not Christianity. It never was intended to be that. And with that, I'm gonna wish you a lovely rest of your day, evening, wherever you are. Thank you for being with us, and I really appreciate your support. And hopefully, I'll see you next Wednesday. Dr. Eric will be doing next Wednesday, and then the Saturday after, hopefully, you'll join us for the Aramaic School of Light session. Have a great day, and talk to you soon.